So I was watching this video about this guy who's it's very genuine. And even though these things that we have in this life is all a mirror, it's suffering is not ultimately real. I tend to go both ways. I realize that I go both ways because part of the process of healing is validating. Validation comes from my experience being present, literally completely surrendering to what's happening in the actual moment. And I think there's a reason why I'm in this situation right now. I've always wanted to talk to people. And I think this is why I chose this backdrop here. I usually have my own backdrop here. And I also wanted to say that this is first before I was like, oh, I would think that it's like, oh, it's not fake, it's not real. But it's got to be something that adds to the point of the story because we're in this story, we're in this, we've heard it, I've heard a lot of it, but one of the biggest things is definitely completely being present and surrendering to the very moment, whatever it is, even if you're not feeling anything. um but the thing that caught my attention with this guy, I'm not going to share a channel because I don't know yet if it's there yet. I just don't know if it's there yet. But either way, the point is that he was talking about being highly sensitive, HSP, empath, whatever we want to call it. It's very highly emotional, highly intense. I think I've gotten a lot of it. I've dealt a lot with it. Like it's not there's sometimes like especially with family. Family is the one thing that tends to bring up those trauma, bring up the emotions and all that stuff. And I would say that's totally okay. Um, like, what I'm saying is that basically because I've had a lot of invalidation, now it's like I'm not looking. I used to look for validation outside of myself, and I would kind of still do that a little bit. Like I check my check Messenger or check online. Someone got back to me. Even like the post stuff here on YouTube. It's like, who viewed this? How many views? How many likes? And I acknowledge that, and I still do it. I'm not trying to run away from it or anything at all. Or at least I don't want to run away from it at all. I'm not trying to be like, oh, I shouldn't check it. I think when it comes to all this stuff, when it comes to being human, the biggest thing is the whole validation thing for me, especially like, with self worth. So, I mean, I do have affirmations and all those things. Like, I feel like I work very differently. Like, I used to, I used to do a lot of the whole, getting angry a lot of pent up rage. And it's not really rage per se. It's more like it's insidious sort of rage. Like, I remember I used to burn bridges, if that's even a thing still. Or I I mean, there are a lot of people in this life where in my life, I don't feel like it's my life as much anymore. like using that, but I could still say it. It's just it sounds a little interesting, curious thing. See, I'm at that stage now in my life where it's like, okay, so I did it. I did say my life, but I'm at the stage in my life where it's just starting to come off very. I've always known that there was something weird about being real, being human, and I just didn't fit in. But I also felt like I also didn't fit in with places where I didn't fit in with other people. That's why I had a post earlier about being a black sheep of a black sheep of a black sheep. And so going back to the whole thing when it comes to validation or invalidation, I used to seek that a lot. Now it's not as much, of course, but either way, it's still there. And I don't want to have to reduce it to a certain level just because other people get triggered by it. So I going back to the whole thing where I said I go both ways when it comes to self-worth is that I I want to be a better value. I want to be in a better energy field. I want to be in a, because I know that for sure it's more childlike. It's more, I'm regaining my sovereignty and I've had that. But at the same time, I'm not going to bypass, we're all at different levels of our experiences. So for me, I've never felt comfortable bypassing truth, like what the person's experiencing at the moment. Um, I used to give a lot of advice too. I mean, I wouldn't say, I guess you could say unsolicited advice. But then I started realizing years ago, it's like being a language teacher, it's kind of like, oh, that makes total sense. That's why you don't correct. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't correction, giving validations, fixing things. It's almost like, why? Why fix it? What I'm saying in there, and what the way I understand it is that when we're fixing something, it's almost like there's a, it, for me at least, when I'm the one doing it, or the way it's being done to me, or it's, what I'm saying, it's you're being given advice, all that stuff. I take it with a grain of salt now, sand, salt, and I just go, okay, sure, I'll take it into consideration, possibly, but if it resonates with me, family is the big one. Again, like I said before, it's like family will want to kind of push it, especially if they're not so-called like awakened or they're not wherever they're not. They're there where they are where they are, but I still get that at least with my family where it's just like, what are you gonna do with this? And what are you gonna do with your life? And then it's just like yeah, what is there to do? Like exactly. They answer their own questions by saying all that stuff. I know the hubris comes out sometimes and it's still rather sometimes, yeah, sometimes where it's I feel like I'm right, but I'm not saying I'm right because I'm right, period. I'm right because I know what I want, right? And it gets misunderstood or misconstrued as something like a lot of it is very heavy. And I'm gonna put in astrological stuff in here. Like it doesn't really matter what you call it, but it's like a Pluto sort of energy. It's like when we want genuineness. I mean, just the fact that I'm like doing this one right now, picking my ear in front of you. I'm not trying to hide anything. This is what's there to hide. Um, there is this sort of like conditioning that I feel like it's kind of like, why do I have that conditioning? Why do I have to like this is why I'm wearing what I'm wearing. Usually I'm just like some of my videos I've posted like I'm wearing this, you know, but I've gone past that stuff. Like I've known for a long time, like for example, like I'll give you one example, like something very trivial, but also not trivial. I feel it's trivial, but not really trivial. It is what it is. And I'm not going to say it is what it is, but it's like wearing formal stuff. I never really enjoyed it. Just like, what's with all the pretense to look good in an interview, to look good in front of people? What is that? It's trying to suck in validation external validation. But really, what is validation? It really stems from that whole acceptance of you're where you are, I'm where I am at. Simple as that. Or at least that's the way I see it. It's not really simple, but at the same time, it is. And at least for me, that's how I see it. That's how I view things. Or it's just like, for example, like, what's like, the whole like, if you're getting to know someone or someone's trying to talk to you, I can understand why there's sort of hesitance to just say exactly what's there because of a fear of backlash, rejection, all that stuff. But at the same time, like I said, this is why I'm saying I go both ways, where it's just like I need it. I validate it. At least for me, if I when I validate myself, the more I validate myself, the more it's easier it is to validate other people. Just accept it as it is. It's just. I mean that I'm going to take that phrase back. It is what it is. Not because you don't care, it's just in the present moment. So, we can't really move up, so to speak, right? We can't really grow and expand if there's something limiting that growth in the first place. Invalidation is one of those things, or inacceptance, or not, simple. It's to put it sometimes in other words, it's to listen, it's to be there, just being. And I still do that sometimes. Like I teach online, and I don't know. There's a part of it where it's just like it's part of the job where I'm like, oh, I'm correcting. There's a higher, for me, what I feel. There's a higher purpose for me. The job is just a job, but at the same time, I am being also shown that it's like, oh, even though that's part of the system, correction, the old language learning stuff. I think I'm just accepting it as it is now. The one that comes back is the whole like the reason I'm correcting more than even necessary at work. I've made it sort of like it's almost like a vindictive sort of thing where it's just like, well, the system wants it this way, so I'm going to give it to them. It sounds so, yeah, it's vindictive. um, but I'm seeing it now where it's like when I'm present, even at work, it's a practice, right? Because there are times where I'm not present. I notice it and it's like I have this reaction. It's just like, we call students where I work, we call students online. They don't call us, we call them. Sometimes they don't show up. Or one of the biggest things is a trigger for me with accents. And I know I have the strong feeling that I know exactly, or at least partially, where that comes from. And that's when, as a child, I grew up bilingual. But I kind of have this belief where it's like the culture that I came from, or the culture that I grew up with, their This lack of genuineness, or what I perceive as lack of genuineness, or rather fear in being ingenuine, comes from I associate that with accents. I'm not just particularly saying like general accents, but we're talking like I don't know. I think there's a defensiveness about there is a definite defensiveness about it where it's just like um people who have accents, they don't speak English well or something like that. It's not about English, it's about my insecurities about not knowing what to say. And I've had invalidation a lot of times throughout my life. I was like, I was perceived as this quiet person, or there would be people who expect a lot for me to initiate things, but at the same time, I don't want to. So there's resentment. So what happens is that my the perceived quietness, or rather what they perceive as like, unreadable, like they can't read me. And because they can't read me, when I all of a sudden burst out, or when I explode, all of a sudden it's almost like, what? Whoa. There's a shock, right? And it's one of the things I've had to learn to personally for me work on. But I used to work on it specifically because it's like, oh, I don't want to get in trouble, or I don't want to. But I'm like, no, I'm bypassing something there. And that is the whole, I'm not validating the emotion, any given emotion at the very moment. Um, but I've been working on it a little bit. I have been doing shadow work for a while. Um, and it's helped for like, I don't know. I don't know how many numbers of years I've been doing it, to be honest. um, and it's not just to say that it's like, see, I made a mistake there. So, but now it's like I care less about it because it's like, meh, because it's a mistake. It's a mistake is a mistake is a mistake. It's not anything but a glitch, right? Glitch is not a wrong thing. It's just like electricity. It's like it's like farting, right? And it's unpredictable, right? And I think that's one of the things that I kind of haven't really come to terms with a little bit, where it's just like I don't. There's a lot of stuff that I still need to work on, not for the sake of working on, so that but at the same time, fulfilling a purpose higher than this human body, right? Um, but one of those things is definitely like for sure not bypassing anything. This is why things evolve, things take time. And when we're surrounded by things where it feels like we don't have time or we have to rush things, well, that creates more of that same energy, right? That's why I'm more mindful about, at the very least, mindful and present with even just after waking up. Am I like rushing to wake up? Oh, because I have work. So yeah, that's one of those things where I'm just like, I plan accordingly, but like for example, like come Friday night, I don't rush to go back to go to bed because I don't have anything the next day, right? So it's really about balancing. For me, it's really about balancing, timing many things. and making time for myself. I believe that when it comes to healing, when we heal for the sake of healing, it's not healing anymore. Healing comes on its own time. Like you don't rush a wound. That's why we get like these like I mean that we get marks, like we get wound marks, like scabs and all those things. Like what do you call that thing after a scab? That thing, that little mark. Um, a lot of physical things that happen to us, like injuries, I don't know, pain, like scrapes, wounds, even all the way to the point of death. When it's not natural death, it a lot of it stems from this rushing, this conditioned belief that we have to get things done. And even though I'm here to help others, that's one of the things. There's a grander picture, there's a bigger picture to this that I'm reminded of a lot of times. Be where I am at the very moment. It really boils down to being present because it's starting with presence is when we start to connect more, like our through authentic selves. And I'm starting to understand it. It's like every time I hear that, I'm like, your true self, your true self. What does that mean, your true self? It's both, I think. It's the human self and the higher self. That is your true self because we cannot live without the other. The grander self, the higher self, is the one that is from there. The source is what it is, right? It's source, it's energy. It's like that's all. We're all energy, but there's a reason the energy was brought down here. No reason why it became physical, so that the universe can learn, and we are universe. We are source. So by denying any of this stuff that we have, invalidating to each other, towards each other, for ourselves, pointing fingers, all that stuff, that all that good stuff. The more we do that, or when we do that, or at least when I used to do it, or I sometimes still do it, more to myself, then it's denying part of existence itself. Right? It's not even just the whole like be positive. It's the whole like it can't go. You can't. It's having a one-way street is the same thing as saying linear time is the only reality, right? So yeah. So something that came to mind now, I just wanted to share with you guys that it's like it's embracing all of it, being present with it. And I think for me, it is a practice, but practice, whether it's intended or not intended, or natural or unnatural, everything is a part of everything. Everything is. That's why now I'm starting to understand. It's like everything is connected, and that's exactly that. So thank you for watching. If you have any comments, I'd like to connect. Just write down any comments, share what you have. Um, if you feel that you wanted to share something, no, there won't be any judgment, and there shouldn't be any judgment. If there is, it's part of the journey of like what we're going through. Like if I have a personal issues myself, that's something I know I shouldn't have to impose it on other people because that's not even connecting. That's completely disconnecting. That's separation. I see you as different from me, that's judgment. That's separation. That's because we see these boxes, right? That's how to create. That's part of what is that separation. It's like my this is the body. I identify with this, and therefore you identify with your body. Therefore, we're separate beings. It's like it's easier said than done. Um, I'm very grateful that it's like now changing, where things are becoming a little clearer. There's it's an energy feeling thing. I don't know how to describe it. I don't have the words for it, and it's fine, right? It's totally fine. So again, if you have any comments or questions, or if you want to share something, feel free. I want to connect. I know if you've seen my channel, I do astrology stuff, and that's something that's fun for me. Something I know that helps people, or at least for the most part, it's something that I know is it connects me to the language of galaxies, the cosmic language. It's part of a cosmic language, right? And that's for another time, though. But anyways, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys later.